in this section, I want to add the idea of variables to the code we have. So a variable is like a box in memory, and that box can store a value like a number or a string or something. So if look at this diagram here, if I have the line x equals 7, that's called a variable assignment. And the way to think about this is that in memory, there's a box, so I've drawn this little box here, and it's labeled x. And it can hold a value. So when the code says x equals 7, what that means is pick up the value 7 and store that into the box. That is basically what variable assignment does. So if I look at this code example here that does that, so in the first line I say x equals 7, so I'm storing a 7 in there. And then the later lines mention x. This one says print x or print lucky, comma x. And those appearances of x, not with an equal sign, those just retrieve the value out of the box. So whatever was stored in there, they're gonna use that. So if I run this, really what I get is just, the prints all end up using 7 because this x equals 7 line stored a 7 in the box, and then the subsequent lines just refer to x. If I change this to 8, so I just changed the one line and I run it. Okay, well now all 3 lines refer to the 8 because this line is storing an 8 in the box. Try one more experiment here. I guess we've seen numbers and strings, 2 data types we can get pretty far with. So if I say x equals quote high, quote, this is storing the string high in the box. So if I run that, then I get these lines all mention high. So in reality, this name x, I chose x as my first example because I figured that's a common variable in math classes. But really, this name, we could sort of choose anything we wanted. So if it's just so long as we're consistent. So I'm going to change this to say xyz equals high. So that'll create a variable called xyz and store the high in there. And then all I need to do is make sure that each one of these subsequent lines also refers to xyz. So if I run it, this program still works. So the gist of it is that you can pick whatever name you want for the variable, so long as later on, when you want to refer to that variable, you use the same name. You have to be consistent with yourself. So the point of this sort of simple use of variables, it kind of comes down to just saving repetition. It means that if there's some value that I want to use in my program, I can assign it into a variable on some early line, and then just use that variable on a bunch of subsequent lines. And if later I want to change the program to use some other value, I can maybe just change it in that one place with the variable, and then all the uses of that variable will just use the new value. And so actually we'll use that pattern pretty often in our code. I should mention that this use of the equal sign is not the same as the use of an equal sign in a math class or in an algebra class. In math, it is a stronger statement. If I say x, y, z equals hello, that's sort of saying, well, x, y, z, these are equal all the time. And in the computer, the equal sign does not have that complicated of a definition. Really, it's just assignment. It's when this line runs, pick up whatever this value is and store it in the box labeled with x, y, z or whatever. So it sort of happens when that line runs, but it doesn't then have force over the whole program. So it is more simple than the use of equal sign that you're maybe familiar with from math classes. All right, so let me try a little code example that uses this. This follows the pattern where it gives a little output. It says write code, change the code to produce this output. And so the idea is that there was someone you had a crush in high school. You had a crush on someone, and so we're going to write this little output about that. So let's say I had a crush on someone named Alice. So then it's going to say Alice, 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 Alice 4 times, and it says in high school I had a crush on Alice. Now the Alice curse is lifted. Now the idea with this program is to not repeat the name Alice a bunch of times. It's to use variables to just have the name once, so that if I decide instead I had a crush on someone named Bob or Zoe or whatever, then I can just change it in the one place. So I'll say x equals Alice. This is what the problem statement says. And the idea is to then write the rest of the lines just referring to x. So in order to say the person's name 4 times, I can just say print x, comma, x, comma, x, comma, x. Let's just try that. See, I run that, I get 4 Alice's. So for the next line, it says, in high school, I had a crush on And it's kind of like fill in the blank, right? I just want to use whatever the name is. So I can do that by saying print quote, and this part just doing it as a string. So I'll just say, in high school, I had a crush on, right? Because that part is all the same. And then I'll end the string, and then I'll say comma X. So it'll print the string, and then it'll follow it with Alice. Well, let's just try it. There we go. That works. And then I'll do the last line. You'll notice the semicolons. I always put the semicolons in JavaScript. In reality, they're often optional. I'll say now this is a little tricky. So that's a string, and I'll say comma X. So again, I sort of mix. I have the string and then X. So I sort of get it to appear in the middle. Curse is lifted. Oops. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, there we go. That works. So this is a fairly simple use of variables where we use an equal sign to assign to it once and then maybe use it a few times below. But actually, that is the pattern we're going to use in this class a lot. So that's the pattern I want you to practice.